Hey everyone, Thomas from Bricks here. We are really excited today to be finally able to share the brand new Bricks 2.0 alpha with you, which is now available as a manual download from your Bricks account. So just head over to mybricks.io and you will find the download link over there. As this is an alpha release, we definitely expect there's gonna be some bugs, definitely possible improvements as well. So as you know, as always, if you could share any findings you have with this 2.0 alpha release with us, either in the forum or your email, that would be perfect. So yeah, we'll definitely try to implement as many improvements and bug fixes as possible. A lot of changes in this release, also a lot of intertwined new features. So yeah, I'm definitely sure we can improve things further from here, as always, definitely, depending on your feedback here. All right, so in this 2.0 release video, or any kind of release videos, we're going to have a look at the highlights here of Bricks 2.0. On the left-hand side, you can see a list of all the highlights that we selected. Of course, at the bottom, you can find the full changelog. There are many more new features and improvements, bug fixes, but those are the ones that we would consider the highlights. And while you can see at the bottom here, a couple of features that also have an impact, new features on the front end, what's basically possible to build with Bricks. Most of the new features are actually inside the builder. So a lot of workflow improvements here at especially the first half of the changes that we're going to have a look at. So we definitely expect it to be much more productive with Bricks 2.0, with much better workflow, much faster in building and designing and developing websites with Bricks. So we're really excited to see how you're going to implement those new features and what kind of workflow you're going to use with Bricks 2.0. All right, so without any further ado, let's just jump right in and have a look at the very first feature here, which is the builder capabilities. So one of the biggest pain points prior to Bricks 2.0 was actually the ability to have some sort of control over what someone is able to do inside of the builder, what we call builder access. So what we did initially, and I think this has been there since Bricks 1.0, since the very beginning, was to provide you with those three predefined options. So you could either define full access, edit content, and no access. Edit content was a very opinionated set of permissions that you had inside of the builder, but there wasn't any way to customize those three permissions, and or even not even speaking of the ability to define your own capabilities or permissions. So what we did now on Bricks 2.0 to really give you proper control to decide what team members or maybe actual clients should be able to do inside of the builder to not cause any damage, to not do things they're not supposed to do, is instead of just providing you with more predefined options, actually, to provide you with the builder capabilities. And that's an interface that's available in the Bricks settings that allows you to create your own custom capabilities. And as you can see here in the screenshot below, there's a set of, and this is grouped by different sections here, depending on the kind of permission category. So we have 50 plus individual permissions that you can choose from, and you can cherry pick. So you can create a capability for a specific user or a specific user role, and then just maybe enable 10 or 15, depending on what this user should be able to do. And you can already see here, this is a very fine-grained what you can actually control. So you can, you have the ability to just toggle everything on and off of a specific category, or you can just individually go in here and, like I said, cherry pick what should be allowed and what should not be allowed. We're just going to jump into this right now instead of just looking at that screenshot here. I'm going to show you how this actually works in the WordPress dashboard. So we just go to Bricks settings, and then under the Builder Access tab, you will see those default capabilities that we already talked about, the full access, the added content, and the no access. So you can view here what's actually possible for the view full access. Of course, you can do everything here. There's nothing that's holding you back. For the no access, you have no access at all. If you're curious with the added content, what's actually possible, or what we basically settled on, what the user should be able to do, you can view it here. And this is just for viewing. This is not meant to be edited further. This is like also to be fully backwards compatible and just to have those predefined options. We keep them here. But if you need more control or even just want to slightly tweak what's possible with the added content, you can just create your own custom capabilities, and you can create as many as you want. So you can just click here on add new capability, and then you can see this capability modal here, and you can give your new capability a name. You can give it a description to just explain for everyone what this capability is for, who it's for, and what should be possible and not in here. I'm going to close this one because I actually already created a custom capability here. I'm just going to delete it. There's a confirmation, right? I confirm, and now we deleted it, that custom capability. And we can click here on edit. We already have this designer capability here, description, permission for all our designers with access to bricks. So in my case now, for this capability, I decided to allow the bricks access or bricks edit for pages, not for any individual post. If you have enabled custom post types to be editable with bricks, then they're going to show up here as well. In my case, I only have the posts and the pages. Under general, you can see all kinds of different features that we can toggle on here. So by default, everything's toggle off, right? If you create a new capability for the specific user, I want to give access to the breakpoint manager, revisions, font manager, icon manager. Those are new features we're going to have a look at next as well. Templates, what should be possible here? Should this user add this capability? Be able to create templates, delete. In my case now, I only want to allow editing of templates. For global styles and setting, you can see here there are a lot of options. Should this capability be able to access the theme styles, class manager, global classes, variable manager, color palettes, global class creation, edit, delete, lock, unlock. A lot of different permissions here. Components, what should be possible with this capability? In my case, I decided to only allow the edit of properties. If there's an instance of a component on a page, that capability can edit the properties. And for element editing and styling, those are the permissions that I gave this capability here. You can go over this list at your own pace. There's a section here for edit elements. So which elements, and this is a list of all the elements here, including also custom elements. You can just toggle on and off what elements this capability should be able to edit. In my case, I enabled everything except for the icon list. Add elements, I have not selected any elements for that capability, so that user is only able to edit existing elements, right? User is also not able to duplicate any elements, delete elements. So it basically has a sort of kind of edit content capability, but also with access to the style settings and some other options that I enabled for that capability as well. All right. And once you've created that, you can just close it off and you can then go down to the builder access. In my case now, for the designer capability, I decided that all of my editors should be able to have that designer capability. So everyone who with a user role of editor has that capability of designer. Then you just click save and you're going to persist your changes that way. So we can have a quick look and maybe just quickly switch to the editor to see how that looks like. So for example, that capability here doesn't have access to the page settings, also not to the global elements, and you can only edit templates, cannot insert any new templates. Also components I cannot insert. So let's have a look and you will see this user will not have any access to page settings. He also cannot add any elements. So let's have a quick look. It's easier to see once we're actually inside of the builder. So that's this editor user here. I'm just quickly going to switch to him. Okay. And we're going to jump into the builder. Let's just reload. And let's take it over. And you can see here, the user has access to the settings, but there are no page settings, right? Because we decided here that this user should not have any access to page settings. Also not able to edit, to insert any elements, right? So if I'm having a look now at the elements panel, I actually don't see the plus button because I'm not able to add any elements. I'm also not able to insert any components. So in that case here, the builder interface adjusts accordingly and those options are simply not provided. If I would not have added template capability, the template folder would also not be here because then I wouldn't have any access to templates, right? There's nothing else I could do. If I'm going to turn this one off, user will not have any access to any of the templates. And this is basically how the new capability builder works in Bricks 2.0. Let us know if there's any capability that maybe, and not any capability, if there's an individual permission that you feel is missing. So this list is definitely not set in stone. We try to think of all the different features that we have in here, functionality-wise, that we should be able to basically restrict through this capability builder. But yeah, if you think anything is missing, definitely let us know. The form or via email, and we're happily extending that further into more detail. I think now in Bricks 2.0, we have more than 110 native elements. If you also count the WooCommerce elements, if you're using the WooCommerce builder in Bricks. If you're using any third-party add-ons or maybe the Bricks child theme with some custom elements, you can maybe have even close to 200, right? That can get a little bit cumbersome inside the builder because obviously you're going to have a massive elements panel if there's a search, but still, normally you just want to be able to click and add your elements. Instead of the 110, maybe, you just stick to using like 10 or 20 of the most basic elements and assemble your site that way. So the element manager we now have in Bricks 2.0 allows you to do exactly that. You can set, or you can choose from 3 different status using the element manager, and that is either the active state, the hidden inside of the builder, or the disabled state. So by default, every element is enabled, right? You can use it, you will see it in the elements panel, and it's also going to be rendered on the front end. So that's the active state. By default, everything is possible. All the elements are accessible. Now, what you can do with the element manager, you can hide an element inside of the builder, and more specifically inside of the elements panel. So if you insert an element using copy and paste or by inserting a template, that's still possible if you have set this state for an element to hidden inside of the builder. But yeah, it will not be visible in the elements panel. So this is really just an option meant if you want to minimize and declutter the elements panel, right? Not to disable an element. If you really want to disable an element, meaning it's not going to be loaded inside of the builder, it's not going to be rendered on the front end, you also have the ability to just disable your element, right? So we're going to have a look at the element manager, which is located under Bricks elements. And yeah, I'm just going to show you how this is going to look inside of the builder and on the front end as well. So yeah, we're just going to jump here to Bricks elements, and there, yeah, you have a description or a legend here as well, quickly explaining what each status is for. And as you can see down here is a table with all of our elements listed here. And this is a list of all of the Bricks native elements and also custom elements, that are either added through you programmatically using a child theme, for example, or maybe some third-party add-on. There are different filters here as well. You can have a look at only the custom elements. In my case here, I'm using the Bricks child theme. I have 2 custom elements, which is this title and title nestable. I can have a look at only the native elements, which are all the elements except those 2 custom ones. And I can have a look at and filter by the unused elements. So there's actually this feature inside of the element manager that counts the occurrences of every single element on your entire website. So in my case now, you can see the container, for example, which is actually mandatory. You cannot disable this one. Sidewise, it is, you can also see here the category an element belongs to is actually used 178 times. So if you want to disable an element, or you want to hide it in the builder, you want to globally disable it, you can use that filter and maybe just first have a look which elements are not used on your site. So if you disable an element that's actually going to be used, maybe it's missing somewhere. So this is a great way to filter by unused elements, and you can have a look and you can tweak everything accordingly from there. And what we're going to do, we're just going to disable some random element. So let's just say for the heading, just to show different options here, because I have heading on my page. Let's quickly have a look at what we're dealing with in the builder here. I have this little hero section here as an example. And we have buttons here and we have a heading here. So let's just say our buttons, I want to disable them. And for the heading, I just want to hide it in the builder, meaning it was not going to show up in the elements panel on the left-hand side. So let's just do that. And I would go ahead here and say for the heading, I want to hide it in the builder. And what did we say for the buttons? We want to just disable them, right? So we do that, we click on save, and then it tells me the element manager has been saved. So that's great. And we're just gonna reload the builder. And as you can see, the heading is no longer accessible here because we said we wanna hide it in the builder. It's still gonna be rendered, like I said. This is just only meant for the elements panel, right? You can still see it in the structure, I can see it on the canvas, and I can also see it on the front end. As for the button, you can see here the button icon also doesn't show because the element itself is not registered, so nothing is loaded here for that element. And I can see this notification here telling me that the element has been disabled globally with a link to the Bricks elements. If I click this one here, it brings me straight to the element manager, and then I can tweak things from here. If I go to the front end, let's just reload that one as well. Same thing. The heading is still rendered, right? Because we just simply hide it in the builder. And our button element has been disabled globally, so I can see this sort of error notification. And this is only visible if you're logged in, right? This is not going to be visible for a normal visitor. They're not going to see this message. If I want to undo everything here and bring things back to normal, I can also just go down here and reset everything with one go. Okay, reset. Let's go to the front end, refresh, and everything is back to normal, right? If I go into the side of the builder, you will also see my heading is back and everything renders accordingly. And yeah, this is everything to the element manager in Bricks 2.0. Let's jump to the next feature, and this is the builder UI, which we actually revamped. You might have already noticed inside the builder now that we explored the builder capabilities and the element manager that things look a little bit different. So I'm just going to jump quickly into the builder to show you a few things, just to highlight some parts that we changed. But of course, this extends to the entire builder. There are many more changes. If you feel anything is a little bit off, or if we missed some part by this builder UI revamp, definitely let us know as well, so we can improve things from here on out. The first thing that you will notice is that the color scheme here, or the color palette that we use for the builder, looks a little bit different. We use different shades here as well. And everything has a little bit more contrast, is a little bit more readable as well. When you edit an element also, you can see on the structure panel on the right-hand side, it looks different. We try to clean that one up. 2, and if we go to the style tab, you can see here everything looks a little bit more neat, right? A little bit fresher than it looked previously. Also, if we go to the settings, you can see here it looks a little bit different, the grouping, theme styles, page settings, or the template settings, if I would edit the template here. The new font manager and icon manager. We have some quick access buttons. We're going to have a look at them next. Those are also new features in Bricks 2.0. Quick access to the Bricks settings as well. So this is going to bring you to the WP admin area. The element manager that we just checked out, right? If we click here, it just brings us to the element manager with one click as well. If we're going to have a look at the theme styles, you will see it also looks much cleaner now. The elements that we provide theme style settings for, they're also all neatly grouped under this elements group right here. And as you will also notice in the toolbar here at the top, the Pseudo class UI, or the selector that we had up here, is also gone. We're gonna have a look at that one later on in this video as well, but it's basically located here under the selector icon, right? And also if we reload the builder, Bricks by default uses a dark mode. If we reload the builder, you will see that the preloader here, let's just reload again, is dark as well now, finally. That took quite some time to make it into Bricks, but yeah, it's now available as well. And yeah, very curious to hear how you like those new changes. The builder UI, does it fit? Did we miss anything? Definitely let us know and share your feedback. And yeah, the rest of the changes you will probably gonna realize once we went through the entire video and tackled all of the other changes. All right, with that being said, we're just gonna jump right into the next feature, which is the font manager inside of the builder. We are really happy to be able to share the new font manager with you, which you can now 100% managed inside of the builder. So you don't need to jump outside of the builder to upload a custom font like we did it previously, right? This is now, everything is possible inside a builder. So prior to Bricks 2.0, if you want to add a custom font, right, if you remember, you can go here to Bricks, and then under custom fonts, you can add a new custom font in the same, this is a custom post type, right? So in the same way, you would add any custom post. So you would create a new font, you go inside here, you upload your font variant, also one by one, select it here, update it, go inside of the builder, reload the builder, access your font. Pretty cumbersome in terms of custom fonts. And then if you had a Google font, which you, I don't know, for GDPR reasons, maybe you want to download locally, it was also very, got many upvotes for that feature as well. Just download it locally, right, a Google font quickly, and then create a custom font from it. Very long process. prior to Bricks 2.0. So really happy to see this feature in Bricks 2.0, the font manager, and we can access it in two ways. If you just want to have a quick access, depending where you currently are in the workflow when you decide to manage your fonts, you can just go to the settings panel, and then here we have access to the font manager. So if I click here, this brings up our pop-up for the font manager. And on the left-hand side, you can see this toolbar here, and this shows me the different sources of fonts that I have. So at the very top, we have the favorites, our favorites. I haven't favorited any font, but basically it's a sort of short list. If you decide I want to have like a specific custom font or a specific Google font, standard font, Adobe font, you can add it to your favorites, and then inside of the font family drop-down, which we're going to see in a minute, it's only going to show us our favorites, right? So this is a way for us to select and to limit for everyone, which fonts should be accessible, right? And through the builder capabilities, which we also showed in the beginning, we can also control who has actually access to the font manager as well. So you can see how everything is already slowly coming together and going full circle here. You can see here our custom fonts. Those are the same ones that I also could see here, right? Those 3 custom fonts that I have. In terms of the styles, I can see the 9 styles here. If I can go here and I can edit this font, if I want to make some tweaks here. If I want to add font variations, if I have a new font, I can just simply click on import, and then I can just drag and drop everything here in one go, right? And upload it that way, the font variations, super quick. Or if I want to do it one by one, I can just click this add button here, right? And not going to do that, so I'm just going to go back here and have a look at the Google fonts, which in my case, those are all the latest Google fonts, right? You can also see a live preview here. So as you scroll down or you search for a specific font, the fonts get loaded, so you can see immediately how everything looks like. If you want to customize the preview text, that's possible as well. So instead of the typical sentence that we have here, if you want to test it with your specific brand, right, you have like a custom text here. And then you can see how everything looks like in every single font. If I want to download the Google font, so let's just say I decide I like this Arbel font here, right, has one style. I want to download it, and it's going to download it as a Google, it's going to download the Google font as a custom font, right? So I'm going to click here. You can see it's now downloading. Once it's done downloading, you can see the little success message popping up. And you can also see this green check mark here saying, basically telling me that this font has now been downloaded. You can also see instead of 3, I now have 4 custom fonts, and I can see my Arbel font here, right, has one style, as you can see. And this is how the style looks like for the font weight 400. Now I can start using this font locally, right? So in terms of GDPR, no more worries. I'm just going to host everything locally, all the fonts that I like. And you could see, I just went to Google, I selected my font, I click download, have it in my custom fonts, and I can start using it that way. And if we want to, let's just say, I just want to quickly show you how the favorites features work. So let's just say I want to only show those 2 custom fonts in my list here, or even though I also have Google fonts, I want to basically restrict the font family selection to say, hey, everyone should only be able to select this Germanist font and the Gotham. So I'm just going to favorite those 2. You can see here, I have this little heart. And let's hide the preview text. You can see they are now in our favorites. If I'm going to go now to my heading and I'm going to jump to the typography and have a look at the font family, you can see here there's a little gear icon as well where I can access the font manager, so you don't have to go up here if you're just down here. And when you change it straight away, you can access it from here as well. But you can see we have those 2 favorite fonts, like I said. And if we now go to the drop down, I'll now have the ability to select from those fonts from this shortlist, right? Everything else is not up for selection, right? And that's basically the new font manager in a nutshell, everything possible, as you could see, right inside of the builder. There's also a trash here. If you have trashed any fonts, you can access them from here and then either restore them or delete it permanently. And that's the font manager in Bricks 2.0. So not only do we have a new font manager that's fully accessible inside of the builder, we also got a new icon, not a new icon manager, we got an icon manager that's also fully accessible inside of the builder. So if you want to create your own custom icon sets using SVGs, which was a highly requested feature, you can now do that in Bricks 2.0 right inside of the builder, settings, icon manager, or any icon control. Just click the little gear icon up here, right? And so what can we do? We can do a couple of things here. Like I said, we can create our own custom icon sets using SVG files. And we can use those icons in any icon control of any element, or also directly inside of the SVG element. In terms of styling, like with any SVG as well, we can style the height, width, stroke color, and fill. And we can also disable icon sets. That includes the custom icon sets that we created, but also the built-ins, like the font awesome ones, the Themify, or the Ionicons, right? So I'm gonna show you this in a minute in the builder, how that looks like. And a very cool feature which kind of fits and ties into the icon manager, are the SVG styles, which now support breakpoints and classes. But that's in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just jump into the builder. I'm going to show you the icon manager now. So under settings, we just go down here and then click on icon manager. We can now see the icon manager model. And I already created 3 custom icon sets. You can see here there's one named Bricks, which has 26 SVGs, which are stored in my media library. And the set is enabled. You can see here it's green, right? Icon set is active. If I want to disable it, I'm just quickly gonna just click here. And with one click, I've disabled this icon set. And you can now see it's also grayed out here. If you have defined, or if you're using this SVG here from this custom icon set somewhere on your site, it's still gonna be rendered. It's not gonna not render the icon if you use it somewhere already, and maybe someone by accident disables an icon set, you still want it to be rendered, right? So it's gonna show, but inside of the builder, you will not be able to select that one anymore. Actually want to access it, so I'm just gonna turn it back on. And yeah, you can rename your individual icons as well. And you can also select them here. So I just hold down Control or Command, and then I have 3 selected, and I can move them to another icon set as well, very easily. You can also remove individual icons. This only deletes them from the custom icon set here. They're still inside of your media library. We're not going to leave them. They're just not part of this icon set anymore, right? And yeah, so those are the custom icon sets. If you want to create a new one or your first one, you would just simply go down here, create icon set, give it a name, hit enter, and there we have our icon set, right? I don't have any icons yet, so yeah, but I can just click here on add to icon set, and then I could just select a couple of icons, add to icon set, and now I would have this inside of my new icon set, and I can just go here and then rename it to whatever I want. In terms of the built-in icon sets, which are actually icon fonts, those are not individual icons. You can see here I've disabled 3 out of 5, so Ionicons and Themify I'm still going to use. But the rest here, the font awesome brands, you can see they are disabled. They're also grayed out, so they're not going to show inside of my drop down. So let's have a look at one of our icons. I've already added the icon element here. So I'm just going to click here. I'm going to open up my little icon pop-up, and you can see here next to the actual source that I can select, right? I have also access to the icon manager, so I can just click here and open it that way as well. Otherwise, like I said, from the setting up here, I can also tweak it. In my case now, instead of the Themify, I want to use my custom icon set, the one here, the Bricks one, and then I can just select one of the SVGs, and it's going to render here that way. If I want to change the dimensions, I can do that as well. I'll just tweak it like that, 100 by 100, and then it looks exactly how I want it using my custom icon set, and I have access to all the other icon sets as well. Yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know about the icon set. It's really straightforward, but it's a super powerful feature to manage, kind of assets that you're also going to use throughout your entire site, in a very effective and productive manner. All right, an extension to this feature, to the icon manager, or to using SVGs in general inside of Bricks, is the ability to now style the SVGs breakpoint specific and also with full CSS class support. So I'm going to have a look at this one next. Yeah, we can actually go back into the builder because we already created our custom SVG icon, and then I can show you how we can tweak those styles here on any breakpoint. And then also if we define a global class, we can also define our SVG styles there as well. So let's just jump into the builder, and I haven't saved my previous changes. So let's just go back here, go to bricks, select our custom icon, maybe this one. Okay, and I'm currently on the base breakpoint, as you can see here, right? The highlighted one, that one is the base breakpoint, and let's just change our height to 100 by 100. And now I'm gonna go to the next breakpoint, to the tablet portrait, by pressing Command B. And you can see here that is inheriting this 100 pixel, but I'm actually now on the tablet portrait, and instead of 100, I want to use 60. So I can just go here now and type in 60 by 60. And this now applies to the tablet portrait, and because I'm using desktop first, also all of these smaller breakpoints, right? So you can see it's using 60 here and 60 here on the desktop breakpoint, again, 100 pixels. And this was previously not possible. So every time you want to actually have responsive icon styles here as for the SVG, you would have to resort to writing some manually custom CSS. Now everything you can do everything as expected visually in Bricks 2.0 right here. All right, let's head back to the changelog and check out the next highlight, which is the bulk edit elements. So this is going to be a great time saver, another workflow enhancement here. It's the ability to select and edit multiple elements in bulk. And we can perform also various actions. First of all, how can we select multiple elements? It works exactly the same way as you would do it on your operating system. So you need to hold down or press Command or Control, depending if you're on Mac or Windows. And then on the canvas or on the structure panel, you select the elements that you want to edit in bulk. Personally, I always prefer using the structure panel. But yeah, you can do the same thing on the canvas as well. Additionally, there's also the Shift modifier key. So if in addition to Command Control, you hold down Shift, you can select all the elements in between the element that you are about to select. So yeah, I'm gonna show this in a minute in the builder, so it's gonna be crystal clear. And yeah, there are also various actions, and that depends on the kind of elements that you've selected. You can see here in this screenshot, for example, we've selected 3 different elements. So we're only gonna see the style tab because the content settings are gonna be different for all of the elements. So yeah, we're not gonna display them. But if you were to edit those 2 buttons here, the same elements, you're also going to be able to change the content because obviously they're all the same elements. So you're going to have the exact same controls. Besides the editing itself, of course, we can also move elements in bulk. I'm going to show you that they all just need to be located on the same level, like under the same parent. And then we also have bulk actions for duplication, deletion, and also to wrap our selected elements. We can also assign global classes in bulk. I'm going to show you that in a minute as well. And yeah, add the class and then make changes to that class as well. All right, let's head into the builder. And I'm going to show you first how it looks if we're going to edit multiple elements and actually the same kind. So in my case, I'm just going to select the 2 buttons. So I can just select the first button normally if I want to, and I'm just going to hold down Command. And I'm going to click on my second button. And now you can see in the structure panel, but also in the elements panel, with this highlighted in this blue colors, you can see as a different state here. We're actually bulk editing 2 elements. And because they're the same elements, I can actually change the text simultaneously. So this is going to apply for all of the buttons. If I would have selected 10 buttons on my page, I would simultaneously change the text for all 10 buttons. So I can just say here now, in my case, I'm just going to say a bulk button, and you can see it updates the text of all of my buttons. Also, both buttons are highlighted here with our blue highlight colors. You can see what you currently have selected on the canvas as well. If I want to change the styles, of course, I can do the same thing. I can just go here, typography uppercase, and it's going to change everything for the selected elements, right? If I were to change the settings for different elements, so let's just say I select this tagline here, I'm just going to hold down Command. So you can see it immediately turns blue because I'm using the modifier key. And then I'm going to go down to this lead element here. So I'm not selecting the heading and the icon individually, but I want to select all the 4 elements in here. So what I can do now, in addition to the command, I'm also holding down Shift now, and I'm just going to click here, and you can see it now selected those 4 elements. I can also confirm here we have 4 elements selected. And because they are different elements, I only have access only to the styles here. So again, I can just say text transform uppercase. Now you can see all of the uppercase settings change for all of the selected elements. If I were to move them at the same time, I can do that as well. So let's just say I have my tagline here and my lead, right? Those two elements, and I'm just gonna move them into this button group. You can see now tagline and lead both moved into the button group. I'm gonna do Command Z to move them back, right? So that worked as well. I can also perform different bulk actions, like I said, for the duplicate, delete, and wrap selected elements. So we're just gonna check that out as well. If I'm gonna select one of my buttons, and then I'm gonna select my lead, right? So I have those two elements selected. I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna say duplicate, and you can see now I have my lead duplicated and I have my button that I selected. The second button is now duplicated here as well. If I want to delete in bulk, same thing, select those two elements. I'm just gonna use the ones that I just added, right click, delete selected, and it selected now those two elements that I just duplicated. The other feature is the wrap selected elements. What I can do now, if I'm gonna, let's just say, my tagline and my heading, I want to wrap it in a block. I can just right click and say wrap in block, and then it's going to wrap my tagline and my heading in this block, right? And the block, it's going to be on that level those two elements used to be, right? So that's possible as well. And the next or last action actually that I can do in bulk is to assign global classes. So let's just say I select my two buttons here. You see, it doesn't show me the classes that those buttons have, because I could have different elements that have different classes applied to them. So we cannot effectively really show this in an interface here. If you have an idea how we can do it, definitely let us know. And we can try looking into that. But you can see here, it also says basically add class. And now I can just assign a class here. So in my case, now I'm just gonna use this BRX test2 class. I'm gonna assign it to my buttons. And yeah, you can now see it's been applied, and it supplies the styling for this button as well. That's how I can assign it. If I want to remove it in bulk as well, I can just click on remove, and it's going to remove those settings here from my buttons. Yeah, that's the bulk edit elements. Another feature that kind of ties into this is inside of the context menu. I also have the ability now to unwrap elements. You can see here an example, right? But actually in the builder, we can also quickly showcase this. Let me just reload to clean everything up here a bit. So you can see here all of those elements inside my content wrapper, right? The tagline, the heading, the icon, the lead, the button group, and the media wrapper. Let me just actually close that. No, the media wrapper is outside. But let's just say that I want to remove this content wrapper. So instead of moving those elements, what I can do now, of course, I can just select all of them and I just move them in front, right? That's possible with the bulk select. But what you can also do as well, depending on which workflow you prefer, if you actually don't want to keep that content wrapper, you can just right click here, do an unwrap, and you can now see it removed this wrapper that I just had here. And in its place now are all of the direct children and their children as well. So that's the context menu unwrap feature as well. Next up in our 2.0 highlights reel is the new visual CSS grid builder. Very highly upvoted and long outstanding feature, finally now available in Bricks 2.0. You can now visually design your grid layouts. It was previously possible, of course, using the text input controls, but you really need to know your CSS grid rules. I'm just going to quickly show you in case you haven't really utilized this feature. So I have this container here, which is using display grid. And yeah, I've just set a gap of 20 here. So yeah, that's like the easiest part. But yeah, then if you want to configure your columns and your rows, you would need to know the syntax here, right? To input this or to use this effectively. For the grid layout itself. If you want to then go ahead and resize or reposition individual grid items, you would need to individually select them, go to the grid column and the grid rows, put in your values here as well, go to the next grid item that you want to resize or move to a different position. So yeah, it's a very manual and time consuming and also error prone process, or trial and error if you don't 100% know the CSS syntax. So Definitely very happy that we can now offer you this overall functionality visually. This is how it looks like. I'm just going to jump straight into the builder so we can play around with this a little bit so you can see the power of the Visual CSS Grid Builder. How can we access it? You might have already noticed this little icon here. So next to the display value on the right-hand side, similar to other controls where we have the variable picker or the dynamic data picker for the display grid. If this is set to grid, you will see this little Visual Grid Builder icon, which we can use just by clicking on it. And then it's going to open up the Visual Grid Builder. Now, if the display is set to flex, of course, it doesn't show, right? It's not a grid layout, but if it's set to grid, it's going to show the Visual Grid Builder here. So we click on it, it opens up our Visual Grid Builder model, and we can start tweaking away here. So in our case, we have 3 individual blocks inside of our layout, right? This is block number 1, block number 2, block number 3, and then we've got a query loop here. And this query loop consists of 3 posts that we just loop over, right? So you can see here, post per page 3, order by date, and then post by post. And so this is my grid layout. It's just flowing like this by default. All I have here is my gap of 20, and I want to start tweaking this. I want to change one where we can change at the very top, the columns, the row, and the gap, right? So those are basically the values up here, the gap, the columns, and the rows. But I can do it now fully visual. If you want to use min and max values, you can also toggle this, and it's automatically going to set the min and max, and you can tweak it from there as well. I'm just going to keep it simple here in this example, and all I want to do is want to change my columns from 1 to 3, as I'm just going to go 2 and 3, and you can see how everything changes. I'm now going to have a look here. This is how my grid layout looks like now, right? Okay, let's continue with the next step, and that's going to be that will resize our first grid item. So what I want to accomplish here, I want to actually resize it that this spans the entire 3 columns. So what I can do now, depending on which direction you want to resize, you can just hover over the grid item, and then you can just drag it on any of its corners. In my case, now I'm just going to use the bottom right, and I'm going to drag it. This would be 2 columns, and now this would be 3. I'm going to release it, and now you can see that it spans all 3 columns. I'm also going to go ahead and use this time to rename this. This is going to be my hero grid item to make it a little bit easier to distinguish from the other ones. I can also reset my individual grid item. I've made a mistake here just for the individual one. If I want to resize everything inside of my grid, I can just hit the reset up here. Let's have a look what actually changed here. So I'm just going to edit this grid item, and you can see it's the hero grid item, right? The label change of my element here. And this is the setting that the Visual Grid Builder populated for us. So we didn't need to worry about setting this manually. And we can go ahead and continue editing our grid. In my case now, what I want to do, I want to, let's remove or reduce the columns here. We don't need 6, we're just going to go to 4. And I want to actually move the last one. So I'm just going to move it to column number 3 on the right hand side, right? So this is how my layout would look like now. Let's have a look how this looks, and you can see it's exactly positioned as I intended to position it. Now, of course, I can also go ahead and resize it like this, right? It's going to cover and go over 2 rows, and then it's going to look like this. And I can also switch between different breakpoints. So this was my base breakpoint, right? So I can continue on the tablet portrait, resize it accordingly, and just go through all of my different breakpoints. Also can do an undo and redo here as well. And for the query loop, actually one note that I would want to add is that this is going to be added using the nth child selector. It's going to be available as custom CSS on your grid layout element. So because I have made a change, I have moved the query loop items around and I have resized them. So let's just check it out how this looks like. So I can go, this is my grid layout element, right? This is where I have defined the grid. And you can see here on the custom CSS, it has automatically added some CSS for me. This is actually just some helper CSS that I added, is a red border here to make it a little bit more visible, the individual grid item. And this has been added by the Visual Grid Builder using the nth child selector. It basically positioned my last grid query loop item here, right? It positioned it and it also resized it accordingly. Let's go back here. What else could we do? we can change the gap. If we want to change it from 20 to 10, we can just do it just like that. We can also fill the grid because we already said we want to have 4 rows and 3 columns. Those 3 are currently not filled. So I can just quickly go ahead and click on fill grid. And it's going to fill it up with those 3 blocks. And they're going to be positioned, in my case, after my query loop, right? So there's another helper here as well. And yeah, this is how you can use the Visual CSS Griller in Bricks 2.0. So the next feature on our list might look like a tiny little feature, but it's another great workflow enhancement. If you need this feature, you really need it. And yeah, you're definitely going to need it, especially if you work with, of course, different breakpoints. If you have, if you're utilizing classes, this is going to come in super handy. It's going to save you a lot of time as well. And that's going to be the inherited setting indicator. You already know in Bricks that when you have a setting on a certain control, you can see this little round indicator, and you hover over it and you can clear the value. Same concept, but for inherited settings, you can quickly inspect them just by hovering over a control. And there we have this little square indicator here. And this is going to check if a setting is coming from a class or from a different breakpoint or a combination of both. And then you can just hover over this little indicator and you can see where the setting is inherited from. And we're just going to jump right into the builder. I'm just going to show you a quick example on my heading here. So we can inspect this together. All right, so I have a heading here. The heading has 2 classes on it. And you can see here we're currently editing on the ID, right? And I can see here on the style indicator that there's a style set for this heading. And I have a style here on the typography. So I'm going to expand this. I can see that on the ID, I've set the font size to 3EM, right? I'm going to remove this, right? You can see the change here. So this is the 3EM coming from the font size. I can also notice that this heading is all uppercase and has a background color. And I haven't actually written this in uppercase, but because we have the inherited setting indicator now, we can see that actually within the typography, we have this text transform. And you can see here, instead of this round has setting indicator, we have our inheritance, which is more like a square, right? Instead of just a round circle. And it's also going to be gray. And if we hover over it, we can actually see where this text transform is coming from. So it's telling us here it's inherited from a CSS class. And which one? It's this one here, inherit typo. And it's coming from the desktop breakpoint. So if I'm going to click on here, what's going to happen is that Bricks will automatically switch to this breakpoint, to the desktop breakpoint, and it's going to select this class here, right? So I'm just going to click on it. And now you can see that we're editing this inherit typo class, and we're also on the desktop breakpoint, right? And now I can make any change that I want to. Now I'm editing the class. I can just clear the value. I can change the value. I can just, not do anything, and I can just continue editing on the ID. But this is a super handy way to just quickly inspect where value is coming from. Is this coming from a specific global class? Is it coming from a breakpoint or a combination of both? Very easy to investigate this. We also use different colors for the global classes. So every setting on the global class is going to be blue, and everything set on the ID level is going to continue using our Bricks brand color here. This our nice little yellow color. If I'm going to change to edit my class now, you can see that the font size, right, which I've set on the ID, now has my inherited setting indicator, which is then shown in our Bricks brand color. And I can hover here and I can see that this setting is inherited from the element ID. I can click on it. I'm basically jumping back to editing the element ID, and I can continue editing here. We also can see that we have set a background color, right, on this heading. And this background color, as I can see here from the indicator, that it has an inherited setting. So if I'm gonna click over here, I can see that the background color has been inherited, and where is it coming from? It's coming from the inherited BG from the desktop breakpoint. So I'm gonna click in here. It's going to, again, select the correct class automatically, and it's also going to jump to the correct breakpoint. Actually going to go to different breakpoints. You can see how this is working on different breakpoint. If I'm going to go to tablet portrait, again, it shows me here is inherited from somewhere, and where is it coming from? Okay, we know this is coming from this inherit BG class from desktop breakpoint. So we click here, it selects the class, it automatically goes to the desktop breakpoint, and I can, tweak my settings from here. Again, very small feature, but definitely it's going to save you a lot of time and headache if you're trying to hunt down where a setting is coming from. So this one also available now in Bricks 2.0. And we continue our workflow improvement tour with the Pseudo class and elements UI, or better, the location of it. So prior to Bricks 2.0, as you remember, up here we had this little cursor or selector icon. And when you clicked it, the Pseudo class's UI or pop-up or model opened. And then you could select, I don't know, the hover state, the active state, the focus state, or any other custom Pseudo element maybe that you created. And yeah, we now moved this selector icon down here to the selector UI, so where we also see if you're currently editing the element ID or maybe a global class. Now we have the selector icon right here. If you click it, it's going to open up the Pseudo class and element UI, and I can select my Pseudo classes, or if you've created any custom Pseudo elements as well. So now this is located nicely down here, the area where it should actually belong. So I'm gonna show you this quickly inside of the builder, how it looks like. Like I said, up here we have no longer this selector icon. I'm going to edit my heading element. And now we can see here that we have the selector icon right inside of our selector UI. So I click it, and now you can see our Pseudo elements and classes on a global level. So those are available on every element, right? Not just the element that you're currently editing. If you want to style the hover, and you select it, and now you can see that I'm currently on the ID level, right? So there's the pound sign for the element ID. And then I can see here that I'm currently editing the hover state. And so I can just go ahead and visually change any styles that I want. In my case now, I want to change the color of my heading on hover to this pink color here, right? Which is now being applied. If I stop editing the element, I can see that this is now working as well. I go back to editing the element. The selector icon is highlighted in our bricks yellow, so I know that there is a setting here applied to some selector. So once I open up the Pseudo UI, I can see that I have a setting here on the hover. I'm going to clear this just to continue editing without interfering with anything that I'm going to do next. And I'm actually going to show you the completely revamped or extended Selector UI, which now allows us actually to visually style any element, and actually also any part of any element. So previously there was a lot of custom CSS involved if you want to accomplish what I'm going to show you. So I'm first going to show you the custom CSS route, and then we're going to have a look at the new selector UI and how you can use it to visually style any element or any part of any element. All right, let's jump back into the builder, and this time we're going to continue editing on the template element. So this is a template element in bricks, right? And I selected the section template here. It's just called section. And I don't want to change the template itself. I want to, specifically for this instance of this template, I want to apply some custom CSS. And what I actually want to do here, I want to style the border. So how would I normally go about this? Because obviously I can style the border, but it's going to style the border of the entire template element, not of anything inside of it. So I can go ahead and start writing some custom CSS if I know how to write CSS. And if I also know how to correctly go ahead and go to the front end and inspect my elements. So I'm going to show you this now, just basically with the expectation that you know how to do this manually, so you can see how the workflow would have been, right? So I'm going to go to the front end, and I'm going to inspect my post title. And as you can see here, this is actually a query loop, which keeps repeating here. So I'm just looping over the last 5 posts. And so what I can do now in order to style the border, because I can see the border is on this selector, for my case now, I would just go ahead and copy that class here, right? So I'm going to copy that class. You can also use the chain class as well. In my case, I'm just going to use that first part. Then we're going to go in here. We're going to use the root selector, right? Because we want to target something inside of our template element. I'm going to paste my class selector for my loop item, curly brackets. And now I'm going to say I want to style the border color, and it should be pink. I know it doesn't look not easy to detect. And now I can see that I changed it, and now the border color is red, right? I can go ahead and further customize this using the border radius. I'm going to set this one to 12. And now you can see how I can, with CSS, style parts inside of my template element. Of course, this is actually prerequisites here are that you know how to correctly inspect your element, and then copy the selector, go back into the builder, write the custom CSS, so not just know the selector, but also the actual CSS rules, the properties and the values and how everything is defined. So yeah, a lot of manual back and forth, even if you know all the technicalities and yeah, know how to write custom CSS. And this is going to be much easier now in Bricks 2.0 using the Selector UI. So we're going to open it back up again, and you could see, I'm actually already have a custom selector. Let's delete that one. Let's save. And yeah, you can see up here now it says selector element. So we can define custom selectors that we want to target inside of the currently active element. And we're going to use the same selector. So I'm just going to paste it in here, right? So this is our loop item. If you remember from the front end, this is the loop item that we want to style. And the class name itself doesn't really say much, right? So I can also define a custom label here. So that later on, especially once I define a couple of selectors here, I know exactly what every selector is actually for, right? So I can just call this one loop item. I'm going to hit enter. And now you can see on the element level under selectors, I have my loop item. And the loop item also here, you can see that currently inside of our template element on the ID level, we are styling our loop item. So without writing any more custom CSS, I can just go straight ahead and say, okay, I want to change my border color because that's what we did with custom CSS. And we can give it my color just like that, everything done visually. I want to change the border radius, right? That's also what we just did with custom CSS. And I'm doing everything visually here. The only manual part that I actually had to deal with was to go to the front end and get the selector. And then the next step, I'm actually going to show you how we can prevent even that step. And we don't actually need to go to the front end anymore in order to retrieve the selector. We can do everything inside the builder. But before I do this, one last example that I want to show you is how you can combine the custom selector and also use pseudo classes within it. So let's just say when I'm hovering over any particular loop item, I want to change the border color, right? So right now the border color is applied to every loop item. I want to apply it on hover, right? So again, I'm going to copy and paste my selector here, and then I'm going to say on hover, I want to style this loop item. So I'm just call this one loop item hover, right? It's a little bit easier to find later on what this one's actually doing. So loop item hover, what do I want to do? I want to change the border color to blue, right? So this one is styled now as well. Let's get out of the editing mode and I hover over my loop item and you can see that the border color now is blue. So everything is done visually here. The only part, like I said, with the front end was to actually retrieve the selector. But I'm going to show you the next new feature, which also allows us to skip even that step. First of all, I'm just going to delete our selectors that we just created. Let's save it. And let's head back to the changelog and have a look at the next new feature, which is the Selector Detector. Now, the Selector Detector was a feature that was originally introduced and pioneered by Oxygen. And it's also now found its way into Bricks 2.0. It's a perfect addition to the new Selector UI because it allows us to find the selector right inside of the builder on the canvas. We can just select exactly the node that we want to target, and then we can further customize it and retrieve the correct selector. I'm just going to show you this in the same example that we already used with the template element, so it's all going to make more sense doing this right inside of the builder, right? So we're editing our template again. I removed the selectors that we just manually defined, right? And we open it up, and instead of typing this time and having to go to the front end, actually we can just close the front end completely. I can just click on this little crosshair icon here, or target icon, and it says Selector Detector. And once I click it, I'm into the Selector Detector mode, which is now enabled, and it tells me here in this little info box, select the node that you want to style inside the currently active element on the canvas. So I'm currently editing the template element, right? And what do we want to do? We want to style the border of our loop item. So this is you can also see once I hover over the nodes, they're going to be highlighted here in this dashed blue color. I don't want to target the post title. I want to target the block around it, right? Our loop item. So this is exactly the one that I'm currently targeting, that I'm currently hovering over or mouse overing. And once I click it, I can see the nodes of the currently active element, and yeah, it basically goes down to the element that I've currently selected. And we can see that is the correct one, is the class that we also currently edited, that we edited before. If you hover over this little code bracket icon, it also shows you all of the other available selectors on this element. And so that's going to be either the element ID. This one doesn't have any ID. If I hover over another one, you can see that it shows me the element ID, it shows me the class, and it shows me the HTML tag. Normally, you just want to go ahead and use the most specific selector to make sure that you're not targeting anything that you actually don't intend to target. So for example, me targeting the div now here doesn't make sense because I know this is a section, right? And then I have a container here, which is a div. And then I know I have a block here, which is also a div. So in my case now, I would just go ahead with the most specific class on the element, on that loop item, right? Which is this one here. And again, I could give it a name, custom label. This time I'm going to skip this step. I'm just going to show you how it looks like not using any label. I can click on create. And this way I created my custom selector just like before, but without actually me having to go to the front end, having to inspect the HTML, copy and paste the correct class. I just simply inside of the builder, enable the selector detector, clicked here and created the selector from that list, right? Okay, so we have our class selected, our loop item. So now we can just go ahead and continue styling everything visually. So again, I can go ahead here and change the color of the element, of the loop item. I can change the border radius as well and any other styling changes that I want to perform. So again, super handy, a great workflow enhancement. You don't need to leave the builder to even configure your own custom selectors. Everything can be done visually inside the builder. So we're really happy to see how you're going to utilize the new selector UI, the new pseudo class and element location, and the selector detector in Bricks 2.0. Another area that Bricks 2.0 aims to improve is your website spacing. So as you probably already know, Bricks by default already applies some spacing, and that's margin top to all kinds of HTML tags. So for example, to your headings, to paragraphs, to unordered lists, to images, to block quotes. And ideally, of course, we could just simply reset all of those margins to 0 and then provide you with a system that allows you to set sensible margins. But that, of course, would break all existing Bricks websites, right? And then everyone who updates to Bricks 2.0 would need to go into every single website they ever built with Bricks and set up the new spacing system, right? So we needed to come up with a solution that is both backwards compatible, but also provides a good way forward for you in order to set up those sensible spacing rules, right? So what we can up with here is the contextual spacing located under the theme style. So we're going to jump right into the builder. I can show you how this works. It's definitely a feature where we expect, or we'd love to get some feedback from you, because I can imagine there's gonna be probably need to be some tweaks here, right? Everyone has like different requirements. We try to come up with the most flexible solution here that's at the same time easy to implement for everyone. So yeah, let us know how we did here and what we can improve going forward after this alpha release. In the builder now, I'm looking at the different page here. I have a post content element, which is outputting, the post content of that I've written here with Gutenberg. I have a heading, I have a paragraph followed by another paragraph, and you can already see here the default margins, right? So I have a paragraph followed by a paragraph, which has some default margin at the top. My unordered list here has a margin at the top, at the bottom. The figure tag, which is holding my image, has some default margins. That heading, which is preceded by a paragraph, also has a heading, has a spacing at the top. Down below here, I'm not using any embedded content. I'm just simply having a container, and then I have like a heading and a basic text and another basic text. Because of the default spacing rules of Bricks, the heading after heading has a default margin top, and then also heading followed by preceded by a paragraph has some margin top. So ideally, I can just simply reset everything here, and then I can use the system that we introduced now in Bricks 2.0 to configure your custom margins. So let's just jump to the theme styles. I can show you how this works now, Bricks 2.0. So theme styles, and then under contextual spacing, you can now see this new interface. So the first order of action would actually be to remove any default margins. And you can do that by simply selecting any existing HTML tag that we provide here in this list. Of course, this list could be much longer. If you need any custom tag, you can also just simply type it in here straight away, right? I'm going to do this at the end. First, I want to select the margins the HTML text that I definitely want to remove the margins for. So those are my headings and my paragraphs. And you can already see now for the paragraphs and heading, I have no more spacing here. I also want to remove the spacing from my unordered list, which is the one up here, right? So I can remove it. You can see it's gone now as well. There's also my figure tag here. I don't have any ordered list, but yeah, I can just basically also make this select the ordered list, the list item for my figure tag. And now you can see the figure tag, which is holding the image, also has no more spacing. You can do the same thing for the block quote. You're not going to see it on that page because I don't have any block quote, but yeah, it's included here as well. Custom tags, maybe I have some pre-formatted HTML tags, so I can add the pre as well. What else could we do if we have some code tags, or maybe want to include the code? And you can go ahead. It really depends on what kind of HTML tags you use on your page and that you want to reset the margins for. But that's basically how it works. You can see now everything inside of my post content element has been reset, and everything also inside of this container that is using a collection of different, basic Bricks elements, right? So that's the first part of the equation. We have removed our default margins, and we now can go ahead and start adding margins. And we don't just want to add margin to every single HTML tag, even if we would manually define the HTML tags. They should be in a specific context, because, for example, down here in our container, we don't just want to simply apply the spacing by default to everything that's inside of a container, right? Because normally you would go ahead here and maybe work with a gap, right? And you would define the spacing that way, everything inside of the container or inside a block element. So, but if we have embedded content like this post content, for example, or a rich text element, or some content inside of a WooCommerce page, for that one, we want to actually, in that context, apply some spacing for sure. Like here now, we have reset the margin, but how can I provide some sensible margins now for this kind of block, right? For this embedded content. And that's exactly what we can do with the contextual spacing. There are a couple of options here that you can easily populate, which is the heading and the paragraph. So let's just say I am setting this to 1 EM. Normally you would probably work with CSS variables. I'm just want to illustrate this quickly, so I'm just going to use plain values, right? And you can already see inside of my embedded content, that post content, the heading followed by, preceded by a paragraph now has some breathing room. It has some margin top applied to it. But note that the heading that we have down here, that's just simply a simple heading element, is not going to use that contextual spacing because it's not in that embedded context, right? It's just a plain Bricks element. But for the post content element or rich text element, the heading preceded by some other element is going to have some heading. Is going to have some margin top. At the very top, the first heading we have doesn't have any margin top because it's the very first element. We don't want to add any spacing there as well, right? So we can continue and define it for our paragraph. So let's just say we also want to use 1 EM. And now you can see every paragraph that's preceded by another element is going to have some padding, right? So this paragraph here, which is coming after our heading, has some margin top. Our paragraph after that paragraph has some margin top as well. And down here too, right? So we can go ahead now and apply this also to list items, to unordered list items. So you can go ahead and add target elements one by one. You could also provide a fallback spacing. So if you just want to say, okay, everything that's not a heading and not a paragraph, I want to apply a 0.5 fallback, that would now apply to every element that has a preceding element inside of an embedded content, if that makes sense. And but you also see it applies, for example, now for our list items. So what I would do now in that case, of course, I can use the target elements to reset it for the list item. But instead of using the fallback spacing, I'm actually going to go ahead and manually put in the target elements that I want to apply spacing to, right? And that can be any selector that I want to. So in my case now, I know that I want to apply some spacing to my unordered list. So on margin top again, I'm going to put in a 1 EM. So you can see now here I have a spacing at the top, spacing at the bottom, 1 EM as well. Then I can continue adding my targets and gonna add something for the figure tag because I know I'm using figure tags, right? And for the figure, I could just say 2 EM. So you can see it has a bigger spacing. If I increase this, you can see now how this affects my image. Same at the bottom, maybe 2 EM, right? So you can see here the difference as well by changing the value. It's updating in real time. And then you can go ahead and add more targets, whatever you want to target. You can also put in custom selectors, right? That's also possible. Gonna stop here. So I just want to quickly illustrate how that works. And that's how we could apply this contextual spacing. In our example now for the post content, like I said, the rich text element in Bricks is another embedded content element. The rich text could also have, like a blog post basically, right? It could have lists, it can have headings, it can have paragraphs, it can have images. So that's also what we consider embedded content, and those are the ones that the contextual spacing applies to. Now, if you want to use those contextual spacing outside of an embedded content. So for example, in my case here now, I have this container, which is holding all of those different HTML tags. You can apply it as well using the contextual spacing. And the way to do this is to put it in your selectors down here. So we want to apply the spacing inside of what? In my case now, I'm just going to set up a custom CSS class. So we're going to call that one BRXCS, so that's the bricks contextual spacing. And whenever I put this contextual spacing, in my case now I'm going to put it on a container, but it could also be in a block. Everything inside of this, all the HTML tags are going to use that contextual spacing. So let's try it. And let's go to our container and let's add the BRXCS class, right? The one that we just said we want to apply our contextual spacing for. And yeah, with this class set now created, of course, now I can easily retrieve it just from my list down here. You can see that it's being applied to the elements inside of my container, right? The selector itself could be anything else. It doesn't need to be a CSS class. So let's just say I'm going to define an attribute here instead. I'm going to call this data spacing true. And then I can go ahead and say for the theme styles, I want to apply contextual spacing to the BRXCS class and also to the data, what do we call it, spacing, if the value is true, right? So the spacing will be applied to any node that has the data spacing attribute set to true, which is the case for our container. We just applied that HTML attribute there. So now you can see the contextual spacing also applies to our container. And I can add this to any other container or block where I also want to apply my contextual spacing rules. I hope it made sense in the way in the examples that we gave you here, but yeah, definitely let us know on the forum or via email how we can improve this further. I'm sure there's potential to improve this going forward. The form element also received a lot of upvotes on the idea board, and that was for the Webhook support, which is now available in Bricks 2.0 as a new action. Use cases here, just to give you an idea of if you never really considered using those API endpoints of the services you might already be using, and you want to send some form data to them, right? Typical use cases could be sending some leads to a CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce. If you want to trigger something in Zapier or Make, would be possible. You could also store your form data somewhere else. You know, it could be a Google Sheet or an external database. And you could also use it to set up some sort of notifications, maybe for Slack, right? To handle it in your Slack app as well. I'm gonna just quickly go over a simple example or just show the interface in the builder. If you're curious about more concrete examples, definitely check out the documentation here, right? Bricks Academy has more details about this feature. All right, so the form element here, I've already created a simple one. And as you can see, action webhook I already selected. There's a new action in your dropdown. And you can then see the control group. Of course, you can combine this with other actions. You can also hook this up and just say you also want to send an email after that. Then you could set up emails as well, right? So I've set up two endpoints here. I want to send my data to HubSpot. Then we just copy and paste the endpoint URL that you have in your HubSpot account. Yeah, I haven't set up any concrete examples, but you would just basically copy and paste that API URL. Data format by default is going to be JSON. You can further customize this by just providing the data structure and the fields that you actually want to send in a specific format. If you have any headers, if you need to do any sort of authorization, you can define the headers here as well. And yeah, same for Slack. You will see there will be an endpoint API, and then you can also send the form data, the submitted form data to this Slack API endpoint as well. And there's no limit here. You can just create as many endpoints as you need. There are additional options here for the payload size, which can be limited. By default, it's going to be 1024 kilobyte. You can do a rate limiting as well, right? And you can decide if you want to continue with the other form actions. If there's an error in the webhook, by default, it will stop, right? So in my case now, if I have this action here, the webhook, and then I want to send the emails, if there's an error with the webhook, the email is not going to be sent. So if you want to skip that behavior and you would just still want to continue, you can do it that way as well. And of course, you can define a custom error message. Yes, and that is the new webhook form feature in Bricks 2.0. Our map element also received a major upgrades, or 2 major upgrades. So we now have a total of 3 different modes that we can use for the map element. And we could define a static map, right, where we just simply create our addresses one by one. We can now also set up a query loop, and you can, through dynamic data, basically output the map markers according to the query loop results. And we can also sync the map with another query on the page. And as you can see on the screenshot below, this is a really powerful feature, which basically allows you to build some sort of Airbnb clone. If you have a real estate listing website, you could have the map right on the right-hand side here. On the left-hand side, you could have your query loop. And you can even connect this with things like query filter, Ajax pagination, or the load more. So as you interact with the query results and as you manipulate them through other inputs, the map syncs as well, right? So this is extremely powerful. I'm really happy and excited to show you this now in Bricks 2.0. So let's just jump right into the builder. And I've set up 3 maps here. The first one is using the static addresses, so that's nothing new here. It was already how everything was working prior to Bricks 2.0. So what I could do here, I could just simply manually create a new address, and then I can populate it using either the address, or if I have the coordinates, I can plug in the coordinates here, right? So in my case now I have those 3 addresses, and they are rendering as I would expect them. Now in the second example, and this is new, is the ability to set up a query loop on my map element. So in my case now here, what I did is I enabled the query loop feature for the map, and I have selected my custom post type property. So that's a custom post type I created using ACF. And in total, this one has 6 properties, and you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All 6 show now here on the map. And how did I populate this? Of course, because we are looping over query results, we somehow need to provide the individual property data. In my case, I have some custom fields where I'm storing the city and then the country. Of course, normally you would have the proper address using the street name and the house address as well, right? The house number. But just for simplicity's sake, this is how I've set it up here. If you have the coordinates defined somewhere in the custom fields, of course, you would just select them here using the latitude and the longitude inputs. All right. So that's the query loop. Another really cool feature, and this is working with the query loop and the sync with query, is that instead of just using the simple info box that we can set up on our static addresses, so you can see here for our address, we can set up this info box where we had like the title, subtitle, and some content that we could define, and then some images. Using the query loop, we actually have complete flexibility over the info box and how it's going to be rendered, because we can create a pop-up template and we can connect it to this map element. And this is exactly what I did here. I created a pop-up template that I'm now selecting here, and through dynamic data text inside of this pop-up template, I'm populating it for my property results, right? So I'm going to show you this quickly on the front end, right? So this is my query loop map. And if I click on any of the markers, it will open up my pop-up template, which is then rendering here the featured image as the post title. The price is coming through dynamic data, of course, and then the location, the city name, and the country as well. And here I can just simply link to the individual property page, right? So this is one result. There's another one here. There's another one here, all using my beautifully designed pop-up template. And the last mode that we can now define, the third mode, is the ability to sync it with another query. I'm just going to show you how this looks like on the front end, and then I'm just quickly going to show you how you can set this up in the builder. Of course, there's also documentation in the Bricks Academy, so you can go through it on your own pace. As you can see down here, we've got a map, and that map is connected to our query, and you can see the query results. As you remember, we have 6 properties in total. I'm outputting 3 per page here, so those are the first 3 results. And then on the second page, I've got my other 3 results, right? Totaling up 6 properties. And up here, we've got a simple search filter. So if I perform the search here, my query results update, but also the map results update. So if I'm searching for something here, so let's just say I'm looking for a villa, you can see that the map updates according to the updates that I have here in my query loop results, right? So if I'm going to reset it, the loop updates as well, right? If I'm going to search for modern here, it has one result. And yeah, it updates now in the query and it also updates on the map. Let's reset it. It also works with the Ajax paginations. If I go to the second page, again, the query results update and my map updates as well. So this is extremely powerful. It's just a simple example how you could set this up, but of course you can go more complex. You can add much more filters. In my case here, for example, I'm using the properties. I would probably also add a price range filter. Bedrooms, bathrooms, we can just get as complicated as we want to. I'm just going to show you quickly in the builder as well how the setup is here. So you can see at the bottom, let's just close this off here. We have our query loop here, right? Again, this is using the property post type, 3 posts per page, right? This is what I would expect. Down here, I've got a pagination that I hooked up with this query, right? This is an Ajax pagination. And up here, I got my query filter, which I also connected to my query, the query loop down here. And then here I can also reset the query loop as well. And the map on the right-hand side is using the sync with query feature. And then I just simply selected the query loop that I have on that page, which I also named sync with query. And then inside the query loop, one very important point or very important note, which you can also see here, there's a map connector element, and that's specifically designed to provide the address and the info box inside of the query loop. So we need to make sure that you have this map connector inside of our query loop. You can see down here I have it, and then it provides you the inputs for the address, or if you want to write the coordinates, you can do that here as well. And if you want to use a info box template, using the pop-up template functionality, you can select it from that list as well. And yeah, those are the new capabilities of the map element. Static addresses are possible still. You can set up a query loop on the map itself, and you can hook up your map with a query loop, another query loop on your page, which then also works with query filters, with Ajax pagination, with the load more button, and basically syncs your query loop results with your map in Bricks 2.0. Bricks 2.0 also introduces a new and powerful WooCommerce feature. So if you have product variations, instead of only being able to output some boring drop-downs, you can now define different type of product variation swatches. So you can see here on the screenshot, and this is also what we're going to set up in a minute inside the builder. For our color attribute, instead of just simply showing the drop-down, right, we can actually see the colors that I created here. For the size, instead of just showing the drop-down, we actually show some labels. Of course, also stylable in the builder. And for the pattern, we uploaded some images for every pattern. So visitors on our website can then choose and interact with those different kind of product variation swatches. And let's just jump into the builder, actually on the front end first, to show you how it looks by default, right? So instead of having the product variation swatches prior to Bricks 2.0, we always had those select drop-downs here, and then I can choose my variations, right? And then I could add my product to the cart. What we want to accomplish, of course, now is to set up this sort of product variation swatch. And the first step here is to actually enable this feature. It's not enabled by default. It's an opt-in feature. So we go to Bricks settings, and then under the WooCommerce tab, we enable product variation swatches. All right, let's hit save. And then we're gonna configure our product attributes accordingly. I actually already did this to keep it short and sweet. But I'm just going to show you my setup so you can see how it works. So under products, I can go to attributes. And as you can see, I've got this color, pattern, and size attribute, right? And I'm going to show you for the color how I set it up. So I'm just simply going to edit it. And those options here, the last two are provided by Bricks, right? So the swatch type, what kind of type do we want to define here? This is a color attribute. So I want to render a color for it, right? For our size later, we'll use the label, and for the patterns, we use the image. But yeah, for the swatch type here, we're going to use the color. And for each swatch type, you can always define a fallback, depending on the type of swatch you have. So I have a color swatch here, so I have a fallback color. If I go to my patterns, I can see swatch type image, I have a fallback image, right? For the sizes I added, I have the swatch type label, and then fallback, I just call this one fallback label, whatever you want to call this. For my size, maybe I would say default size, or medium can be the default, right? So those are the attributes. And if I have a look at my terms, so in my case now for the colors, I have 5 colors, blue, gray, green, red, and yellow. Let's just configure them. And you can see here in the preview already, this is the swatch type from Bricks. For the blue color, I've already defined my color. If I go here to edit the color, I can define the color value, right? I can click here and I can change the color accordingly. And I would just go through all of my colors and pick the correct hex code. For the gray, I have it. For the green, I have it. For the red and for the yellow. Same for the patterns. If I have a look at my patterns, you can see that I've selected this polka dot image and then this stripe image here. And for the size, I have large, medium, and small. The label is also clear here. It's just a large label, medium and small. I actually haven't added any label. It's just by default going to use that value. But that's also possible. So I would now actually go ahead and use this in my single product page. I would need to edit the add to cart element. So I'm just going to go here, edit with Bricks, load up the builder, and I can already see the product variation swatches actually, because I already enabled them. Let me just reload the page. So you can see now how this looks like, because I already did the configuration in the builder. I just needed to turn back on the WooCommerce product variation swatches in the Bricks settings in order to make this work. My setup here is pretty simple. You can see here product variation swatches is a new control group under the add to cart element. And here I can decide how I want to render this one. For the color, what should be the size for the color? By default is 32 pixels. If I want to make it larger, you can see now this is how it looks with 60, 160. If I want to have it smaller, it can look like this. I also set the border here and the border radius, the active color, the active border also has a different color. I can define that. For the label, I've set the typography. Of course, I can tweak it further and I can just simply, instead of having all uppercase, right? If I remove this, you can see the change on the canvas as well. When I increase the font size here, I can do this as well. And for the image, again, I'm also using the 32 pixel. If you want to make it larger, you can do that as well, right? You can just set it up just like that. Let's clear those values. And that's the type image. The tooltip that you see when you hover over any of those controls, over any of those product variation swatches, we can also customize. In my case now, this is how I customize it. This is how it looks like. Not the prettiest, but I just want to make it obvious so you can see how it looks like, right? And yes, that's basically how the product variation swatches work in Bricks 2.0. Components also received an upgrade in Bricks 2.0. You can now nest components within each other. So I'm just going to show you how that one works now inside of the builder. And also we plan to remove the experimental stage tag from components, so you can start using them in live and production websites in the Bricks 2.0 final release. There are also plenty of bug fixes with in regards to components, so definitely make sure to check out the full changelog below to see all the other component changes. And of course, after Bricks 2.0, we're also going to continue to further upgrade components. It's definitely not in any final stage. Of course, it's not experimental anymore, but we'll definitely have some items planned that we're also going to update soon on the roadmap as well. Okay, have a quick look at nested components. So I have a card component here, and if we have a look at the card component, you can see that inside the card component, we have an image, we have a heading, and that heading is actually another component. So you can see that my heading component within my card component is working. And then here I have a simple button. So inside of this card component, my heading component, which also has some custom properties here. So I have set the text here for the heading, and that's going to update, as soon as I make a change here. And yeah, it's just a simple example, but it's basically how we can use components within components in Bricks 2.0. Now, last but not least, let's talk about some breaking changes, which of course we always try to keep to an absolute minimum. But of course, in order to properly move forward without too much technical depth, there's some changes required. That's especially the case here when it comes to styles. So there have been occurrences with or problems with overriding some Bricks default styles, where you basically either you need to have a more specific selector, or you ended up using important for a specific CSS rule just to make sure that it can be applied and can be preceded, can precede the Bricks default styles. And using a feature, a modern CSS feature like Cascade Layers, this is actually not necessary at all. So back in Bricks 1.12, we already introduced this feature of Cascade Layers, and back then was an opt-in feature. So under Bricks settings, performance. At the very bottom, you could opt in and try this feature. Of course, most users did not enable it. For the ones, really happy for the ones who already enabled it and started using it, providing feedback. We already tackled a lot of the reported issues there, so that we now feel pretty confident introducing this as the new default. So Cascade Layers are enabled by default, and so you should not have any problems anymore to override any of the default Bricks styles. There should be no more need to use any important or to try to use a more specific selector. This should just work now out of the box. If for some reason it's not working for you, there is an option here to enable this behavior, at least for now in Bricks 2.0. There's definitely also going to be a setting that we're going to retire in the future, but as we transition into this new default behavior, you have that option to disable it. So you can go to Bricks settings, and then under performance at the bottom here, you can disable Bricks Cascade Layers, right? We're not gonna stop providing fixes for styling issues that occur once you have disabled this feature, because going forward, it's gonna be the only solution. So we wanna make sure that we can properly transition towards that. And ideally, from this new default behavior, any bugs that arise, if you can report them in the forum or via email, we can tackle all of them. And by the time that 2.0, the final 2.0 one-click update comes around, we tackled all of those reported bugs in regards to Cascade Layers. All right, if you also want to learn more about the Cascade Layers in the Bricks Academy, there's an article as well, which explains this concept here, if you're curious about the technical details and the decision there. And yeah, that's the Cascade Layer functionality in Bricks 2.0. And last but not least in our long list of highlights is the deprecation of global elements. Back when we introduced components in Bricks 1.12, we already said that we will deprecate global elements in favor of components, because there's really no need to work with global elements anymore. They're definitely redundant now and not as powerful as components. So in Bricks 2.0, we still support rendering of global elements. Of course, you need, same with this setting here with Cascade Layers that we just talked about before, there's going to be some transition period, but it's one of the 2.x releases. We're definitely going to remove also the global element render. Now, there is a converter here, so you can actually easily transition from your global elements to turning them into components. So you don't need to go to every single instance of every global element and then just try to replace it with a component. We have provided you with a converter here, so we're definitely curious and looking forward to your feedback, how that one is working for you. And of course, there's also an Academy article. I'm just going to show you a very simple example here. On my website, I actually only have one global element in use, even though I have more defined. You can see here on this page, I've got a section, a container, and then I have my global element here. You can see, because they are deprecated now, they're going to show in the structure panel with this red warning color. And also if I click on editing a global element, it also tells me what I should do here, that I should go to Bricks settings, general, and then convert in order to convert my global element to a component, or to unlink it. I mean, if I see an instance of a global element, I can also just right click and just unlink it, right? But let's just say I'm using this global element all over the place. I don't want to just manually having to go and check every single page. Where is it? And then just trying to replace it manually, right? That's where the converter comes into play. And you can find it under Bricks settings general. Up here, global elements, which are, like I said, going to be deprecated in 2.0. And I actually already ran the converter. Let's just go back here again. And similar to like a code review, we can have a similar review for our global elements. I can just click here on start. And then it's going to go over your entire website, all of the pages, everything you've built with Bricks, templates, pages, content, header, footers. And it's going to look if there's any global element inside. And in my case here on the global elements page, there's one global element called global icon, which is correct, right? This is the one that I defined here. And I can just jump into this page and just manually edit it. Maybe I just want to have a look and I want to just unlink it. But if I'm going to use this all over the place and maybe I have 10 occurrences here, I can just go ahead and convert it to a component straight away. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to convert this global icon, or this global element, which is an icon, into a component. Let's do that. And yeah, it's already done. Global elements converted to components. Okay, thank you very much. And you can see here now in our review, it doesn't find any components anymore because it already converted this global element icon into a component. So let's just go back here. Let's reload and let's see what happened actually. And we reload and we see that we now have our global element turned into a component. It's now called, it's still called global icon. It has all the styles, it has the color, everything that I defined before, but now is a component, is no longer a global element. So if I go into my components list here, you can also see, and this is a different components group. We call it converted global elements. So every global element that has been converted to a component using our converter here, it's going to show up in this section. So they also, logically separated from all the other components as well, right? And this is how the converter works in Bricks 2.0, allowing you to move from global elements to components as easy as possible. All right, of course, there are more highlights. This is just basically the ones that I think warrant some explanation. That's why we went over them one by one. There are more highlights here. For example, the variables manager. Now, whenever you rename a variable inside the variable manager, it's gonna replace it site-wide, right? This was also not possible before. The icon fields, which are available in ACF and Metabox, now we also have an integration for those in Bricks as well. If you use conditions, they're also now supported on components. And for the code editor, it also now has a full screen toggle, so you can view and edit your code accordingly and properly without having to rely on this little window that we have inside of the Elements panel. All right, so that's everything I have for you today in the Bricks 2.0 highlights reel. We wish you happy editing with Bricks 2.0 Alpha. And as always, if you have any feedback, make sure to let us know either on the forum or via email. This was Thomas from Bricks, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.